Welcome to Fakes. This is a podcast or a show, a conversation where we talk about labels that fit and some labels that don't. I'm here with my dear friend Pasha. My name is Charlie.
Yes.
And what's it like being a black woman?
I love it. I love that. It is interesting. So I will say that as a black woman, I feel like people will compliment me or say, oh, you're so pretty, or oh, you're so this, and then it makes me wonder, do they think I'm pretty for a black woman, or do they think I'm pretty in general? So there's a bit of a qualifier, I would say, with that compliment. But in general, I sort of move through the world and I'm seen, and sometimes I'll maybe get a lingering look. Sometimes, when I'm the only black person in a space, I know it immediately because it's just like a sight thing. It's very visual.
Yeah.
So overall, I would say that it's okay. It can be hard. It can be really good. It can be really satisfying and gratifying. Like we had our summit last week where we invited black leaders from the community. We invited speakers and just all of the black employees to as many as could attend, to gather together, to learn from each other and share and grow. And it was really impactful and really powerful. And it made me walk away thinking, wow, there is some real good that can happen with this. I just don't know what the follow-up is and what are the action steps, but overall, it was a really good experience. So those are the kinds of moments where I feel recognized and sort of given a platform, which I appreciate.
And the overlaps of where we work and that type of black event doesn't happen often.
No, it doesn't happen often. It was actually a surprise to me that was offered. And so that was really cool to have the community and community partners here, networking and meeting each other and just sort of sharing and engaging in a sort of open blackness, being black, being seen, being embraced in a way. And it was really fun, and there were some dances. But
you mentioned something, open blackness. And that's something that I feel like this place doesn't get. A lot of places don't get. They value Pasha as the person, but that part of her, they want it almost watered down or something like that. So it makes us more comfortable. And if that happened that night, I'm excited for it. And
yeah,
when it doesn't happen, that's when I feel I almost feel uneasy, we're trying them out like a token or something like that, or as a signifier of who we are rather than who they are.
Exactly. Yeah, it was really nice to sort of have that endorsement of it is okay to be who you are, and we talked about bringing our whole selves to work and that authenticity, and sometimes you feel like you can, sometimes you feel like you can't, but in my case, I feel like I can bring my whole self to work. So little backstory, born and raised on the east side of Michigan, Southfield, born in Detroit, raised in Southfield, high school in Rochester Hills. I have always sort of had this sort of affect. The way that I talk, it's always been this way. My parents talk like this. And so I went to a private school, a private elementary school, a private middle school, and then a public high school, which was the best decision ever. I'm so glad I went to a public high school. But this is how I've always talked. I never sort of picked up on some of the ebonics or the way that some people talk. If you think about what a black person talks like, maybe that's not what I talk like. So I feel like I can bring my whole self to work. But there are other people who maybe they have a background where their speech isn't the same as their colleagues, and they feel like they can't bring that into the office. And it was really interesting to hear people talking about that. Or there are some things about my blackness that I feel like I can just bring in and it's okay. But I can't think of anything that would be something that I don't feel comfortable bringing in. But it felt good for me, especially because I felt like, I could be my whole self. But we were just talking about what it means and how other people feel. And again, hearing stories of people.
You mentioned a lot of things there. So the separation between in white collar positions, that just a much higher percentage of white people than in blue collar or skilled labor positions. So I always look at like what I'm kind of like only thinking of myself. Like I think of opportunities I don't get, and I can only imagine how much that's amplified when you see like you're 70% of the workforce in the plant and you're 10% of the workforce here, if that. And yeah, it would be tough not to harbor a little bit of resentment around that.
Absolutely.
And maybe it's just such a fact of life that you're good at like just incorporating it into yourself and not repressing it, or like repressing it so it's like not on the surface, whereas I totally am not.
It's hard because you have to have an education, you have to have all of these other sort of prerequisites to be in a place like this. And because of the systematic and systemic racism that exists in this country, that's sort of inherently built into a lot of the systems that we live in, that access is not equal. And so people who don't have that can certainly harbor that resentment. And, I feel sometimes guilty for having the upbringing that I had, because we don't get to choose our parents. We don't get to choose what communities we live in, especially as children. And so I feel like I was really fortunate to be brought up in the environment that I was. I mean, I have a bachelor's degree and I have a master's degree, and I sometimes flirt with the idea of getting a doctoral degree. And these are just things that I have access to that a lot of other people don't. And so it was hard for me to feel like I was showing up for the people that were there from manufacturing, because I have different access, I have different experiences. And it was kind of like, wow, like this is real, and it was just good to hear from them too directly, and like, what can we do? And I was just trying to figure out, how can I help? Like, what can I do? And I don't know if I have, again, in the same way that like, the systemic racism of the country isn't something that I have to solve. This is something that I'm like, well, the company should solve for that, right? Like, that's not, my job, even though I feel guilty and like I should participate and I should help in some way to advance other people who are in different positions, and maybe don't have the same access that I do, you know?
Yeah, totally get it. Excuse me. So very separate, but I see some of the disconnect there. So my sister and I are the first white collar positions in our family at all. Like it was farming, blue collar, service work before us. And you feel like, what can you do to help those that you identify with? And I don't really have identification with other white people. Like, I only think of myself as white when there's someone non-white in the room. More like how should I change my behavior to be more welcoming, I guess. So that is the white privilege of being able to sort of live in the world without awareness of your race, which is something that I don't inherently don't have. Oh, for sure.
But it's interesting because like a lot of the time, it depends on who I'm with, right? It depends on who I'm with in my friend group or whomever. There are quite a few people where that doesn't come up, or I don't feel it until someone makes eye contact or someone externally from the group says or does something or whatever. That's when I'm like, oh, right, a
reminder.
Exactly.
And you're proud of being a black woman.
Yes.
But it's like, I didn't need the reminder.
Yes,
like,
exactly.
As I'm just walking across the hallway.
I have a story. So I was at a coffee shop, and this black guy walked in front of me. Like, he held the door open, I think he held the door open, but then because he did, I let him go in front of me. And so he got his drink, and then I went up to the counter, and then I got my drink. I was just one drink. And she was like, oh, that'll be like $24. And I was like, what? She assumed that we were together. And I was like, well, I only ordered this one drink. I don't understand. Now, partly, I'm wondering, why didn't the guy in front of me say, like, okay, yes, time for me to pay?
Maybe he thought you paid at a different time?
Maybe he thought he'd pay at a different time. Maybe he thought it was a pay it forward. I've been to Chipotle once and they gave me my food for free. So maybe there's like maybe he thought, oh, it's being paid for. Or it happened so fast, you're just like, okay, and you just move, to the side of the line. And so that was a moment of I don't know if it was unconscious bias, maybe, but the woman assumed we were together when I didn't say a word to him. And I get asked that, Charlie, all the time. Like if I walk in and there are other black people around the group, people will say, are you all together?
I think so.
Which is like, it's so funny because they don't do that for other people, probably.
Yeah.
Probably not.
Yeah. I mean,
maybe. But.
Maybe an assumption if there's other like pudgy, like computer looking guys, but like not really.
Yeah.
I don't like scrutiny that I don't control. Like, and I feel like that would be very difficult for me being in your position. Whereas like, you love yourself, you're great, you're a strong black woman, all that good stuff. But it's like, can we just not look at me right now? Or can we not think of me as other, even if other is great, even if I carry it well, like.
Just being under the radar.
Yeah. And like I'm very blendable as long as I don't open my mouth. So that's a superpower of mine. And people can like reveal their real selves to me because they think they're talking to a mirror. And like, that's how I've learned a lot of good stuff and bad stuff about wherever I go.
Totally.
And I would miss that if it was gone. I would miss that more than any identification I have to being white or my own heritage, which I don't even know.
Right. Yeah.
Because I just assume it's like I've gotten a fast pass on a lot of things in life just because I won the lotto or whatever.
Right.
Even if I don't feel like it.
Right.
And
there are things that would have happened that you wouldn't have noticed, like things that you just don't notice now.
Yeah.
Where like, so some months ago, you asked me if I wanted to go to the Trump thing with you downtown. And you're like, yeah, we're just gonna record, we're just gonna go downtown. And I was like, absolutely not. Yeah. Because I am like a walking, talking like target, right? Whereas even though you don't hold those beliefs, you can go down there and people that just think that you're like one of them, right?
For sure.
So you get this like chameleon sort of effect and you can sort of be, able to really understand, oh, this is where people are thinking. Like, I mean, this is what people think. Like when you say a mirror, I think you were wearing a pride shirt or something and someone on your team was like, why are you wearing that? And just, they think they see you and they sort of glom on to that identity matching and then.
So I have this dumb American flag shirt. It just has an American flag and like a palm tree in front of it. And everybody thinks it's a Trump shirt. I wore it to Vegas and 3 Trump guys gave me high fives. And I was like, I'm not gonna like interrogate this or say F Trump or whatever. But it's funny, like the piece is close enough to fitting who I want it to be, so let's just go with it. Whereas like someone like Pasha, I gotta think about. I think about all the time. But
honestly, that like the palm, so the thing about Trump is the American flag has been co-opted by the right.
It's gaudy.
It's like, exactly. Which the American flag is for all of us.
Yeah.
I don't know at what point it became their thing.
Yeah.
But it's for everyone. So like when I see an American flag with a palm tree, I don't know, I don't think that a Trump thing doesn't come to my mind.
Yeah.
But because they're seeing it as this is ours.
Yeah. It's just weird. People make those assumptions because even though like I love you, I can't get to know all of you. So you have to make assumptions in any relationship. And I will know like less than a couple dozen people as well as I think I know you. So it's like you have to make assumptions, otherwise you would never move forward in life. And I guess just acknowledging that some assumptions like are doing real damage.
Some are doing damage and some are good and some are bad.
Yeah,
you know,
sure.
Right? Like, so it is very interesting how it sort of all plays a role. It's funny to think. So when I worked at the news station, I had a colleague who was a gay white man. And I would say that he could tone down his like natural self, which he did. He code switched. Yeah. And so no one knew, because he didn't have to know.
Yeah.
Whereas me, it's like as soon as I walk in, you can't even pretend anything.
Yeah.
It's just there. I'm just black. Like.
Yeah.
So there's something that I really envy about.
So compliment, I see pretty woman then black, but it's very short. It's very short succession.
Thank you.
Yeah. I don't know if that's a compliment or not.
No, it is. So I would say it's just so interesting that, I wish sometimes that I could blend in to a space and just kind of like go under the radar and see what I would see. And honestly, when I'm in like a black space, I sort of feel that way.
Yeah.
When I was in Italy studying abroad, there were so many African people there that for the most part, people didn't bother me because I thought I was African. So they just like left
Do
me
people
alone.
bother you? Like not here,
necessarily, but like, I mean, Italy's different. Like a country where they're trying to get you to buy something or trying to, the like energy is a little off, or maybe they're trying to pickpocket you or whatever. In another country, I feel like I didn't get that as much as some of my other colleagues did. As a blonde woman, right? A blonde woman in Italy, or that's more of a.
Maybe they see them as more of a target, whether to buy or to.
Right, exactly.
Whereas you kind of go under the radar.
I go a little bit under the radar in some of those. Not in Japan. Not in Japan at all.
I believe it.
Yes.
It's funny. I have not been afraid of like just existing since I was like 13 or 14. And even my wife, who's a white woman, like she doesn't have that luxury. She has to think, like maybe not fear, but she has to be like cognizant. Whereas I can go for walks and like I was walking all over Vegas, even places I shouldn't have walked with headphones on. And I can be that oblivious just because whether people don't see me as a target or I'm close enough to the norm that I don't stick out. Whereas
absolutely.
Yeah, you or other people might not get that.
Right. Being a woman on top of it is sort of like, the double marginalized, vibe.
For sure.
Which I'm glad to be a woman. I love it. And I love being black too. And sometimes I wish like, ooh, what if I was like Japanese and black? Or what if I was like, I think it's easy to sort of wish that you had something else. But ultimately, I'm proud of and happy with who I am, but I learn like how, I'll get questions about my hair from family, like Nick's family, from people that I work with, just like, not as much anymore, or strangers, or people who feel like they have a right to touch it, right?
Touching's one thing. I mean, I would say maybe 80% of it has really good intentions.
Right.
But still, it's like not something you want to
exactly
open up.
And then there's the issue of you're supposed to caretake their feelings now. So they wanted to touch your hair, but you're not comfortable with that. But now they feel like, well, it was just, it was a nice thing. I didn't mean any harm by it. Well, but there was harm. So it's like, how do you address that? And then you have to take care of their emotions as even though they were the perpetrator of
you gotta let them off the hook a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's interesting. I mean, so entirely different context, but people stop to talk about, and even touch sometimes my daughter's hair. It's a very different color, but it's coming from a different place than yours is. It's like, that's a color and it's almost always positive. And because we are typically the same color as the people coming, I see them as peers or whatever, and I don't really care. I probably should safeguard my daughter a little bit more than that. And maybe some of those people that like go that far, their curiosity, either they didn't know a black person or their parents weren't good at like introducing them. I'm not like apologizing for them. And this is what it's resulted in. Whereas, I don't know. Yeah,
and if you don't know a lot of black people, or if you only know a few, that can color your experience of what you think black people are like.
Yeah.
What you think like.
You're always an example.
Exactly. And you have to speak on behalf. I just don't want the mic to.
Yeah, you're good.
You have to speak on behalf of everybody. I can't do that.
And yeah, it's tough. And I'm sure some of your edges that like were naturally in your personality got filed down because you always felt like an example. So you might have lost some of yourself because you were a black woman.
People ask me to speak on behalf. People think that I'm the version that I can, like, it's just, there are so many different kinds of black people.
Yeah.
We are just, like, in multitudes of skin and hair and eyes and whatever,
upbringings,
right? Everything.
How you relate to the world, relationships to white people.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Sure. And it's just, it is a fascinating thing that, like, I love sociology. I studied sociology. That was my minor. I never did anything with it. Would love to find something to do with it.
I got a couple of degrees I'm not using either. It's fine.
Yeah. But it was so fun to learn about different, like the way that people operate and the way that they move through the world. And I've been really fortunate that I've never had any overtly, explicitly violent or aggressive or anything like that happen. But I will say that I do struggle sometimes if I'm in a particular neighborhood or a particular area, especially now in 2024. I mean, I worry about, like, am I going to just be, the person that someone sees and thinks, well, I'm going to make an example, or I'm going to, take out whatever aggression or whatever. Yeah. So, but luckily, no. Luckily, I have mostly been able to avoid that.
Yeah, and a lot of that's because hopefully the world's getting better, and part of that's because the changes that you're making in your life to navigate and not put yourself in those scenarios.
Right, like going to the rally.
Yeah.
Or just,
It was all a trap, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. But see, I appreciate that you can kind of do that, and you can, like, go into those spaces and sort of see, because what that means is that you're like an all-seeing eye. You can see what people really think because they'll probably tell you.
It gets filtered through the lens of my own biases. But yeah, I've had say reprehensible stuff just because I was riding in the car with them and they felt like I was an ally, and it's like, I don't know what to do with this
information. What did you say with that?
I kept my mouth shut.
Yeah.
Like, I was preserving my place, and it could have been a teachable moment.
But also
they were not a teachable scenario.
Or someone who's like...
I'm not in, like, you got to play the cards you have and operate where you think the best outcome is going to be. I've missed plenty of opportunities, both with my behavior and also other people's behavior, like not catching things before it really hurts someone, because I'm kind of unoffendable too, because I'm such a baseline, like I'm generic human 14 or whatever. Like it takes a bit, and that maybe some things have rolled off my back that shouldn't have. And I've engaged in conversations I probably shouldn't have been, but it's, you work towards it.
Well, I wonder, since we're friends, I would say we're close friends.
Yes.
Does knowing me as a friend put you in a situation where you're thinking maybe a little bit more about that now? Or, like, tell me about how that, when you go into those spaces, if you're sort of experiencing some racism or something,
So I haven't traveled as much since I've known you. So really, when you get outside of your element, you start to meet new people, and part of that meeting is they tell you who they are, or at least they tell me who they are. So I haven't had as many opportunities. I think about it more in terms of my own behavior and how much of a troll I can be to push, and whether it's pushing people away. Because you need some type of, at least I need some type of grit to, like, cause retention. I can't just be 100% pleasant. Like, because then I just fade away into the ether. But if I'm a little bit of a troll, like, it keeps everyone working together and moving forward together.
I see. Can you explain that a little bit more?
I don't really know if I have an explanation.
Okay.
So, because maybe in spite of, I'm ignorable. Like, if I'm minding my manners, like, I will vanish. You see me because we're friends, but I will vanish, like vanish from opportunities, vanish from everything. So part of what makes me Charlie, or makes me not generic human, is being a little bit of a troll, listening, responding, and sometimes that's to build bridges, and some of that's just to be a little turd. As I've gotten older and the opportunities are less, I'm being less of a turd. Knowing you has made me think about everybody better, and I think often that we didn't really have an interaction, but I didn't give you a time of day until we were, like, pretty close. And just, I had assumptions. Most were about just the nature of your job, not like what you looked like or anything like that. I thought you were a pretty woman and then black, which is different than what was around.
Yeah, and that is interesting, because to me, the color is like the first thing. Not generally, like, it's interesting to hear that perspective.
Well, it just speaks to another type of bias. Like, I still see the black, but it's like, viable sexual prospect, check or check. How much of the time of day should I give them, even though I'm in a committed relationship? Right. Like, it's just, I'm sexist before I'm racist. So, Happy to be evolving.
I love that. I love that.
5 years later, oh, she has a brain. Oh, she's wonderful. I love her.
That's amazing. So I think just sort of as we close
you think this conversation's over?
Well, no. But yeah, I mean, I am interested in having these conversations, and I do wonder, like, it gives you a good opportunity to see how things differ outside of your bubble. So we went to part of the summit and the workshops and stuff. There was a section on allyship, and I went to that room because I had a feeling that mostly non-Black people were going to be there. And I wanted to sort of see how that conversation was going. We had a Black facilitator. But also, what I learned is something that I can put towards allyship for my LGBTQ plus friends, right? Because that is not a way that I identify. And so I can use my learnings about allyship and how to support for them. So that's what but I also wanted to hear, like, what are they gonna say and who's gonna say what? And it was a really fascinating opportunity. So I feel like we are starting to facilitate those maybe a little bit naturally, but I hope that just continues.
Yeah, and you need the awkward push to start things going. So as a white just walking by there and even coming to it, like it feels a little awkward, but everything needs to be forced in order for it to get started.
It does.
And it felt good. It felt good to see you having a different vibe, that you didn't feel like you had to be like Superwoman because you were an example to everyone about what being a Black woman was like. So no, that's cool. I'm happy that I got a little bit of it. I still am uncomfortable in those environments, but that's good too.
Yes, and you can be uncomfortable and also be interested. I think the uncomfortability or the discomfort is a part of it, because that if you didn't have discomfort, then we wouldn't have any of this. We wouldn't have any issues. We wouldn't nothing, like the world would just be, we're all the same, right?
Yeah.
I think it's because of the way that things are, creates that discomfort. And it's good to hold that, and also to know that you can go beyond that. And discomfort is sometimes good, and you can just sort of like, you can admit it, and you can say, here's where I feel like I'm lacking, or here's where I feel like I don't understand, and that's part of it.
It's tough to progress when you're comfortable. Like to grow, that's part of it.
Amen. Yeah.
All right, what's like one or two things I can do to be like, I don't know, a better white guy?
I think, challenging people on their racist thoughts, like not thoughts, but just speech. Even if it's like why'd you say that? Or hey, I found myself stepping up when people, and it could be an email. I mean, it could be something where if it's in the middle of the moment, they might get really defensive. Maybe you pull them aside, or maybe you just kind of give them if you don't laugh, if you don't say anything back, those are also choices that can help prevent.
One thing I can do to challenge and not reveal myself to be an ally is tell me more about that. Like when they say something dumb, and then they'll go off. They'll typically go out on the branch that you just laid out for them and hang themselves.
Yes, they will.
I've done that a couple times.
To
hilarious to me effect. Hopefully it isn't taken as me like
stoking flame.
Yeah, or something like that. Like if I can get someone, like both of those times I've done it and it's went like wild, like
I thought that was
It's been good. It's been good learning for the person. It's been...
Unless they get talking to by their leader.
Also, the fact that they type that on
That's crazy.
With such little prodding.
Yeah.
Pretty much my things were like, tell me more about that.
Exactly. Your curiosity is important.
Yeah.
Whether you're trying to, because I think you were even in the discussion when you said, if somebody has an opinion or something that, you wonder how they got to be that way. You wonder how they got there. It's like that curiosity.
If you're curious. It's tough to be curious about someone who's a bigot or whatever.
Oh, totally.
It is.
Totally.
Like, I don't want to hear more about their story. It might be for the same reasons I don't want to know my background. It's like, that part, like, can I just move forward? And a lot of times you can't until you know the rest of it.
Yeah, that's true. And you know what? Until the systems are sort of set up a little bit better, it's going to be kind of hard to move forward, right? But did you watch the Watchmen show that they ended up canceling?
I watched most of it. Yeah, I liked it.
Yeah, and how they had like reparations and stuff.
But that caused all sorts of I'm not saying that's not the answer, but that caused all sorts of problems. They had a different level of bigotry.
It was very interesting.
Yeah.
I really liked that show. I'm so bummed they canceled
it.
But it's interesting to think about. And so I would say in answer to your question, that sort of that pushing back, that challenging, and then I think stepping outside your comfort zone, like in terms of like you did when you came over to the summit and you were like, hey, I'm gonna sit with you for a bit and kind of take in this information. I think opportunities like that, I think like do things with them and have speakers or whatever. So I think that there are ways to sort of be curious and also be an ally in a way that feels, that might give you a little bit of a nice, healthy amount of discomfort, but also sort of show that you're, you know, an ally and doing good things to support.
For sure. Okay, we'll wrap this up. Thank you. This wasn't nearly as awkward as I thought it would be.
Oh my gosh, you thought it was gonna be awkward?
No, never. This is great. Thank you.
Yes, of course.
All right, bye.
Bye.